Oh, no.
Peter, mic check.
5, 4, 3, 2. 1, 2, 3. What is this for times?
That's for Sal. So if you have a shot after this, then you turn to that camera in the back. Come on. Serious question.
I don't have an idea. If I do, I'm not wearing eyepiece, so it'll be hard to hear that.
Still need the chair, so you ain't got no excuse.
And then now you can wear them? No. I got mine resold last year.
It's not really a tip so much as the tire remains under the helmet. Standard.
Yeah, no, I agree. I was worried still for
Just use your plane. I saw Brian Roberts, so he said, ask Jake.
Or if you can figure out if anybody else is putting up there on their private jet.
I am looking at, actually, that reminds me, I should see maybe schedule. Your son and I can go on that side. Dude, this is a good time. My son told me this morning when I asked him that I should use it. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 2, 4.
Really?
Hi, thank you.
Nice to see you in person. Very funny though.
Nancy, you have that experience with your children? They give you unsolicited fashion?
Well, this wasn't unsolicited. I did solicit the advice.
That might take
Different time, Daddy. Different time. I'm sorry. I didn't remember the answer today. I apologize. What do you hear about? It's a great
I was like really killing myself for that. Yeah, it works.
Five, four, three, two, one. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yep.
Listen more time. Yeah. See, some people say don't go for stripes on TV.
Look at Peter. I saw Jake on TV and I saw talking about that. I thought, no, that's great.
Your son's complaining. looking to get out the door in the morning
Well, okay, so I dress in the dark when things match. I feel good.
without oatmeal on myself, coffee all over my clothes.
Test, level check, testing.
I've got actually 2 jobs. I shouldn't worry about that. You should. I should. Got it. You both. All right. Sal. Yes, sir.
He's gonna talk into your mic.
I just don't want to send it out if it's not. I mean, that's what he said, but I'm not, I haven't seen any other discussion about it, so I don't want to send out false alarms. Right, but so what is our kind of like take on that he's like cautioning that it could? Alright, I'm sending that out. I'll just send it from all of us. Thanks. Well, so what would, so warns, the word warns in the subject? Could, the warns it could? Okay. Okay, perfect. Thanks.
Hey guys, 2 minutes.
Heads up, guys.
Good morning, everybody. I'm proud to be joined by my colleagues this morning. Now, as everyone knows, for months now, we Democrats have relentlessly asked to hear from relevant witnesses and review relevant documents in this trial for a very simple reason. This is about truth. And today, the Senate will vote on whether witnesses and documents are allowed in this trial. The importance of this vote is self-evident. Trials have witnesses. Trials have documents. The vote today is about whether the Senate will have a fair trial of the President of the United States. So it's deeply disturbing that on something of such importance to the future of our democracy, a few of my Republican colleagues announced last night they'd vote against hearing additional evidence. It's clear where the American people stand on the issue. Republican senators who decide to go against the will of the people will have to reckon with it. The result of today's vote is still an open question. But I would note that even in Senator Alexander's statement announcing his opposition to new evidence, he said that it was proven that the President did what he was accused of. He came to the wrong conclusion about hearing evidence in this trial. That's clear. But Senator Alexander, a senior Senate Republican, a retiring member, said out loud that I think most Senate Republicans believe in private. That yes, the President did withhold military assistance to try to get Ukraine to help him in his elections. And yes, the President did interfere with congressional investigations of that misconduct. He said, yes, the President conditioned foreign aid and a White House meeting with an ally at war on the performance of bogus investigations that would help his reelection. Alexander rejected 90% of the argument from the President's counsel that the President did nothing wrong. He acknowledged that the President did something that the founders feared most: the potential corruption of our national elections by a foreign power, solicited by none other than our own President. And to hide that gross misconduct, the White House exhausted every legal trick in the book to prevent Congress from investigating. If my Republican colleagues refuse to even consider witnesses and documents in this trial, this country is headed towards the greatest cover-up since Watergate. If my Republican colleagues refuse to even consider witnesses and documents in the trial, what will the President conclude? We all know he'll conclude he can do it again, and Congress can do nothing about it. He can try to cheat in his election again, something that eats at the roots of our democracy. And one more point, a point I've been making for weeks, but is most relevant today. If my Republican colleagues refuse to consider witnesses and documents in this trial, the President's acquittal will be meaningless because it will be the result of a sham trial. If there are no witnesses, no documents in this trial, there will be a permanent asterisk next to the acquittal of President Trump, written in permanent ink. So, Senate Republicans face a choice today between seeking the truth and covering it up, between a fair trial and a farce, between country and party. No matter what the results of today's vote, I believe the truth will eventually come out. My Republican colleagues should think about that before they vote today. The truth will eventually come out. We could vote to see the truth in this trial, or it could come out in a few weeks or a few months. And on that day, every Republican who voted to hide the truth in an impeachment trial of the President will have to answer for it. Senator Murray.
Well, thank you. You know, since the news first broke about the president's call to pressure the Ukrainian president to investigate his political rival, Democrats have made very clear we need to approach this fairly, transparently, and in a way that allows all of the facts to come out. We didn't want to be in this position, no one does, but as the severity of the potential violations became clear, we insisted the investigation and trial uphold American values that we and our constituents hold dear. Trials should have evidence and witnesses. No one is above the law, and every public servant's first loyalty should be to the people of this country, not a political party or figure. Unfortunately, what we have seen from our Republican colleagues has strayed dangerously far from those very basic principles. They've stuck their heads in the sand when presented with an overwhelming case illustrating the president's guilt. They've twisted themselves into knots trying to claim that they needed more time before voting on whether to hear witnesses and evidence, and then said hearing new testimony or reviewing new information would just take too long. And now tonight, all signs point to a rushed acquittal of an impeached president. Not because there wasn't enough evidence, there is already, and everything, including the president's own aides and statements suggests that more exists. The reason that we are expecting a rushed acquittal of President Trump tonight is because Senate Republicans are about to make a terrible choice. They're about to dismiss this with a shrug and a who cares, rather than with deliberation and substance it so certainly warrants. They're about to choose a cover-up rather than a fair trial, and to put President Trump before the United States of America. So this morning we are asking Senate Republicans one final time, don't make that terrible choice. Choose our country. Choose our national security. Choose our democratic institutions, and choose the rule of law. If you still somehow have doubts about the evidence the House presented, vote for a fair trial with witnesses and evidence. If you have no doubts and just want to prove Democrats wrong, do the same for the sake of showing the Senate can fulfill its responsibility if for no other reason. But do not make this trial a cover-up just to avoid hearing the truth you don't think you'll like, because everyone in this country will hear it sooner or later. The full truth will come out, and each of us will forever own our decisions about whether or not we're on the right side of it. We've got an opportunity tonight for a fair trial that ensures we have as much information as possible before making that decision. Let's not waste it.
Thank you, Senator Murray. Senator Sherrod Brown.
Thank you, Chuck. I'm Patty, and Kamala, thank you. I'm not a lawyer, but I, like 75% or more of the American people, understand that when you have a trial, you have the prosecution, the House managers, you have the defense, the president's lawyers, and you have witnesses and testimony and evidence. And as my colleagues have said, this is a sham trial if there are not witnesses and evidence and testimony. Every single trial ever in the United States Senate, I believe about 12.5 of them, for judges and for presidents, every single trial has had witnesses. This will be precedent-setting. Will be the first time that's ever happened. We know a number of things. We know that the President of the United States solicited a bribe from a foreign leader in exchange for assistance for his campaign. We know the president cheated, he got caught, and he tried to cover it up. We know those things. We know that Mitch McConnell announced ahead of time what the verdict was going to be, that he was going to acquit this president. We also know that Mitch McConnell wants this trial over quickly with as little public attention as possible. We have watched. We see fewer cameras in the chamber in the United States Senate so that America can't see what their senator is doing as this trial goes on for the last week or so, a couple of weeks. We see it in the number of how all of you are restricted from certain areas when my whole career in the Senate, you've been able to roam free and talk to any of us in the halls. Most of us believe in a free press. Most of us know that, all of us know that, at least all the four of us know that you're not an enemy of the people, and most of us stop and talk most of the time to you. Mitch McConnell wants this over as fast as possible with as little attention as possible. That's why today I'm going to fight. I'm going to fight to ensure the American people can hear our deliberations with the amendment and after the amendment tonight on the deliberations, that there be full deliberations and that the lights be on and the cameras be on, the American public can see. I filed a motion to make sure these are open to the public, not done behind closed doors. These proceedings have already made it clear what dangerous behavior we condone if we acquit the president. I've spoken to lots of Republicans, as my colleagues have, talking to them about this. We know what they say about this president in private. We know the fear in their eyes about voting against this president. We also know that when I talk to my colleagues, the one question I've asked most of them is, Republican colleagues, is if we acquit this president, what's to stop him from doing something worse? He will be unhinged. He's a vengeful man. He's angry. He will engage in even more reckless foreign policy. He will be more likely to try to steal the 2020 election. I ask my colleagues, and all they do is shrug. They know better. I'm hopeful that we will keep trying to get witnesses, but if we acquit this president in a sham trial with no witnesses, it sets a precedent. You can abuse your office, and Congress will simply look the other way. Senator Harris.
Senator Brown. Senator Harris.
Thank you. Thank you, Leader Schumer, for your leadership. Let's just take this to the end game, and we can take it to the end game based on just a few days ago when we started. They've been trying to rush this thing through. At first, they proposed that we would have 2 days, and then their constituents said, well, that's ridiculous, and so they extended it to 3 as though they were being very gracious. But they've always been focused on their end game, our Republican senators. And the end game for them has been acquittal. But here's the deal. You cannot have a true acquittal if you've not had a fair trial. So they are not going to get what they've been trying to get if they do not allow witnesses to come forward. This is not a fair trial. The American people, the vast majority of the American public, want this United States Senate to produce the new evidence. The only place this is being debated between Republicans and Democrats is not among the American people, it's here in the United States Senate. The American people, Republicans and Democrats, the vast majority, believe that the new evidence should come forward. The vast majority of Americans who have ever walked into a courthouse as a witness, as an accused, as a juror, know that the only attributes of a fair trial in our system of justice are witnesses and documents, evidence, none of which have been produced in any meaningful way based on what we know is available here in the United States Senate. So what we're about to do today, we believe, is to have the United States Senate, based on the majority of senators, make a decision to exclude from our process evidence that is available, that is probative of the very issue before us. Now let's talk about this in the context of the issue that is before us. There have been 3 impeachments of a president of the United States in the over 2 centuries of our history. This is the most serious in terms of the charges. Underlying the concerns of the framers of our Constitution, of which we all took an oath, many of us many times took that oath, to protect and defend that United States Constitution. The most serious concern our framers and founders had is that there would be foreign entanglement in our government, in our democracy, in our republic, in our elections. And that is the basis of Article 1 of the impeachment of Donald Trump. Is it not right, if we are going to honor our oath, much less these fancy lapel pins that everybody walks around here wearing, that we would fight for the integrity of this process and that we would receive evidence that we know is available? So the bottom line is that at the end of this, they will probably get what they want, which is that we are going to end this today or maybe tomorrow, But the evidence that we know is available will not have been presented. And what that means as its bottom line is that this will not have been a fair trial, and therefore they cannot walk out of this building and allege and assert that there has been a true acquittal. There will be no true acquittal if there is not a fair trial.
Thank you for my colleagues for their three great statements. Yes.
Do you view it as at least a partial victory that you have a Republican like?
Yep.
Do you view it as at least a partial victory that you have a Republican like Lamar Alexander saying, you proved it, the president did do something wrong?
He should have done the right thing and voted for witnesses and documents. But I believe the vast majority of my Republican colleagues, even though they're fearful of President Trump, believe the president did just what the House managers allege.
But the fact that they're now saying that out loud, saying that
Well,
the House impeachment managers are right, and
yes.
the president's defense
Look, as I mentioned in my statement, I think that it shows that the House managers were right, and even Lamar Alexander, who's a very loyal Republican, basically rejects over 90% of what the President's counsel said in the Senate chamber. Yes.
Senator, Republicans have said that voters should make this decision with an election coming up this year. Why shouldn't voters make this decision?
Look, the bottom line is when the president does something so egregious, as my colleagues have said, you don't look the other way. Does that mean you would just do this in a second term? And there's one more point. If this president is interfering in the elections may not have a fair result. The very charge goes to the fairness of our elections. And very few people doubt that he would do it again and again and again. He's already tried several times. Yes, Taylor.
What has surprised you looking back over the last several months? Are you surprised by how this has turned out in any way? And
Well,
with the benefit of hindsight, do you think House Republicans or House Democrats or Senate Democrats should have done anything different?
No, I have great faith in Nancy Pelosi and the job that the House Democrats did in the House. I have great faith in the House managers and the job they did. When we look back, I think the thing that we are most gratified about is we knew this was an uphill fight. We knew you need 2/3 to convict. We know that the president is a vindictive, nasty president who goes after anyone who opposes him. And we know that Republicans, even those who might know better, want to go in line with him. The fact that 4 weeks ago, after Mitch McConnell said on Sean Hannity, he's doing just what the president wants, and we have no chance for any kind of negotiation, I wrote a letter to all my colleagues, but sent to Mitch, saying we want these 4 witnesses and these 4 documents. And because of the amazing strength and unity of these people in my caucus, that is ringing, let fairness ring from one coast to the other, all across America. Americans know that Democrats are for a fair trial and witnesses and documents are needed. And they know that Republicans are opposing even that. So we're very gratified about how this has moved forward. It's, we're not in the majority. We have a president who strikes fear in the hearts of Republicans. And yet here we are, and we feel that we have done a very good job. Very good job. Yes, in the corner there.
Would you move to amend a motion to proceed to the article?
Okay. I am not going to I'm going to talk with my caucus. I do believe this. I believe that the American people should hear what every senator thinks and why they're voting the way they're voting. And we will do what we can to make sure that happens, but I'm not going to get into any details. I have to discuss it with my caucus. Yes.
Thank you for doing this. So, Andy, can you explain what's going to happen on the floor if there's a tie and Chief Roberts breaks the tie? My understanding is that the Senate can overrule him. So what's the point in him having that authority to break the tie?
Well, I'm not going to get into that. I just say this. If it's a tie, it'll be up to the Chief Justice. The Chief Justice knows that every trial has witnesses and documents. Yes, in the back there. Nope, you'll go next.
Would you like to see open deliberations, and for how long for each Senate
Well, again, I'm not going to get into the details. We're going to decide that in the caucus. We always have an inclination to do open, but sometimes open is hard. To open up the caucus takes, if you go into closed session, if you do, it takes 2/3 to open it up.
And every senator
Yes.
should have a chance to speak, and that's.
Democrats that break from the party and vote with Republicans to acquit the president, is that a reflection on your leadership at all throughout all of this?
The bottom line is very simple, as we've said. Because of the great unity and strength of our caucus from one end to the other, any acquittal of the president has no value. Okay, last question.
Do you think, realistically, had the House managers done or said anything differently, that there was any situation where they could have maybe convinced somebody like?
I think the House managers have done a very, very good job. Thank you, everybody.
Did you get outmaneuvered by Mitch McConnell?
Senator Brown, can I just ask you about your motions, Senator Brown?
We're gonna talk more about that in the caucus, I'm sorry.
Okay, okay.